Hello and welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversations. I'm joined by my good friend Krishna Kumar, fondly called as KK. We are doing this series on fatherhood. Today, we are going to discuss how we learn about fatherhood. Hope you find it interesting. Hello, KK. Welcome to the conversation.
Hi, Joseph. Glad to be back once more.
Yeah. Let's start with this, KK. Who are your role models? Last series, last episode, we talked about our fathers,
Yeah,
and I'm sure our fathers are our role models
right.
for our because we watch them closely.
Yeah.
Are there any other role models from where you learned about fatherhood, about parenting, any other role models?
Yeah, so it goes like this, right? Like, of course, like you said, our fathers are going to be our role models. I mean, in both good and bad ways. One of the thing also is if if I were to be, I mean, now that I am a father for two kids, so some of the things that I think of is okay, what are the things that my father did to me which I liked, plus what are the things that I felt was missing or which I would have wanted to happen, but it was not there for various reasons. And can I fill those gaps? Right. So that could be a
Mm,
way to for me to start with. And times also have changed. So I grew up in mid 80s, late 90s, the entire 80s and 90s generation. So that time the approach to parenting, all of that was mostly on mothers, right? Like most of the times at home, mothers were the ones who were there like to take care of the kids, and fathers used to come and work and provide for and things like that. But there were influences, of course, and they were we learned from what our fathers did to us. So that's one sort of a role model. And the way I look at parenting. That's the thing. But beyond that, of course, I look at a lot of people, right? Like in my friend circle, people in my network, people at work. So all of those people contribute. Some of them more actively contribute because they share more. Because that is something which I feel in the even in the workplace, because you spend a lot of time at work. We also talk about multiple other things beyond work, right? Like so those
mm,
conversations
mm.
really has helped me. I mean, even though this was not a very structured approach, right? Like we don't get into a meeting saying that okay, today I'm going to discuss about my kids. I mean, we
Discuss
go to a
parenting.
meeting to for reviewing a task or whatever it could be, right? But it could start with my manager talking about her kid doing this painting class. I mean, has joined this painting class and how she is getting involved in that painting class, things like that. So it could be as small as that. It could start from there. I think that is something which is happening now, and it also depends upon different organizations and the managers and the colleagues that you work with, the peers that you have at workplace. Because I think the whole environment also should be like that. Like we have worked in multiple organizations, some are more free and freedom to talk and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that is something which I look forward to. One of the person which I look forward to also is you. So I want to understand, right, as a master for me, like what do you think? How has your parenting style has worked? Because you are way advanced in the journey compared to me because of the number of years. Just from that point of view, I would say, but also you are more evolved from my point of view. That when it comes to parenting, you are more evolved in my view. Yeah, maybe because of the gray hair that you have. But what about?
So I liked what you said, KK. Not only the last part, but we learn the good and the bad from our parents, from our dad. What they did, what we liked, what they didn't do, or even what they did, which one that we didn't like, and then probably we shouldn't do. So I think when we sit down to analyze, to reflect back, I think that's where we learn a lot more than reading books and talking to others and everything. It's all fine, which is consumption of the information, but only when we reflect we will know what we should take it, what we should apply, and so on and so forth. For me, in addition to my dad, this particular reflective practice helped me a lot. Obviously, as I said initially, my dad was a very, very strict disciplinarian. Which part of it I liked, which part of it I should implement. I still want to be a I want to bring my kids in a disciplined manner. But how the discipline has to be is something that I think about a lot. For me, another role model is I was lucky enough, after I graduated out of college, I was in Chennai. For 3 months, I stayed in my friend's house. So in addition to my parents, I had the opportunity to observe somebody else's parents very, very close manner. Especially, I liked his mother. Her name is Sheila. I loved how she parented their kids, her kids. In general, I like, but I'm going to tell you one episode, one anecdote that happened, which kind of, I mean, obviously, as you would know, it was well before I got married. I was even thinking about marriage and everything. It was straight out of college. But that incident was fresh in my mind. And I said, this, whenever I become a dad, whenever I become a parent, this is how I want to bring them, my kids. So I'll give you that. So we were there and we were young. And my friend and I, his name is Arun, my friend and I, we were supposed to go to a retreat place to see the place and then come back. So there were three of us, Mervin, Arun, and myself. And somehow his mom, and Arun is the only one who had the bike. So somehow Arun's mother said, you know, deciphered that we will go three in bike, which we should not go. So she said, Arun, don't go three in bike. Here is the money for auto. Take the auto and go. And we met, all the three of us, we met and we teased him, oh, come on, what, Arun? We should all go. It will be fun. And we forced him to come. We went, we saw the place, we finalized everything. We came back. This is what showed me what parenting is. He came back. As soon as he entered the house, as soon as he saw his mom, and he's also like, 22 at that particular time, right? As soon as he saw his mom, he said, Mom, sorry, we went to three triples in bike.
Wow. Wow.
That was like, she didn't yell, she didn't raise her voice, nothing. She didn't even ask, did you go triples in? He could have hidden it from her.
Yeah.
But I said, how much she would have brought them up in love, discipline, what the family values are, honesty is important. How much she would have brought it up that my friend would just see her and admit that he was wrong. I said, there is a lot that has gone on behind.
Yeah.
Whenever
20,
I
20.
become whenever I become a father, this is how I want to bring my kids so that I don't have to be there. I don't have to yell at them. I don't have to beat them. I don't have to do any of those kinds of forceful things, but they themselves will come out and be honest. And if they cannot be honest with me as a dad, they can never be honest with anybody else.
Very true, Joseph. Yeah,
So
I think.
that incident shaped my thinking. So again, that is only a manifestation of everything that has gone behind, right? So I said, I started thinking about it. I talked to her, and as I said, I stayed there for about 3 months. As long as I was in Chennai, I was in touch with her. Again, these are all pre-Facebook, pre-WhatsApp era, so I lost touch in with her. But that incident, I learned a lot. So if I am evolved, as Newton said, probably I am standing on the shoulders of a lot of these people. So I observe, I note down, I reflect, and say, okay, how should I do it? So I would say, from a role model perspective, my dad and Sheila auntie is what I would say. As ironically, from a mother, I learned how to be a good father.
Yeah, because I think there is nothing wrong about it, or I think that
Absolutely.
it's something we can all learn from each other, multiple people. I mean, irrespective of the role somebody is playing, the inspiration can come from anywhere, and I think this is a very good thing.
I want to touch upon one thing that you said.
Mm.
In the office also we discuss, which is very true, and there has to be openness in the office, there has to be space in the office to discuss non-office things, personal things as well. But how much of that is helping us, and how much of that is putting pressure on us?
Okay. Yeah, that's also again interesting. Coming back to, I mean, just to reference the past episode also, right? Like we spoke about this, right? Like in the kids' school, somebody kid is doing
Hmm.
something like our kid get influenced, or we are in the receiving end some cases. So yes, I think at workplace, I mean, it's not just workplace. I would say across, right? Like in your friend
Hmm.
circle, also this could apply. In your among your network, also this could apply. So it's more. I would consider that as a more generic question. Also, I think it influences a lot in this current scenario because I would say two things, right? Like one is, yeah, because in a way we are all in the same level. You can see from an economic condition standpoint to large extent, right? Like we are working in the same company. To some extent, there are some synergies between each of the team members, and so there is some sort of going to be, I think, the pressure or good or bad for that matter. So some of the things that we can take actually to implement, like in your case, like what you did from Sheila auntie. But again, we also need to look at the journey that we have had versus somebody else has had, why they have doing certain things, or
Hmm.
some of the things because of the virtual world, right? Like because now in the current situation, a lot of colleagues are also more virtual. So we also don't know a lot about their actual environment in which they are also operating. For example, people living in Bangalore versus people living in Coimbatore, for example. These could be two different cities, two different exposure to the kid and to the parent. So I think there should be some line in which we should draw boundaries, that I would say, because not everything we can emulate and practice. The other point which I wanted to do talk about also is the role of society in at large, right? Like for example, when I was growing up
Hmm.
in the locality that we were there, I grew up in Gandhi Museum campus in Madurai, which is a fairly large campus, and only the employees of that organizations were having quarters. So there were about like 30-35 families. So everyone knew who my father is, who I am, and almost like 35-40 families know their fathers, know mothers, know everyone knows, and they all also took care of me in some way or the other, right? Like for example,
Hmm.
if we were straying off like outside of the campus and somebody in the main roads and things like that, someone's father would be coming and he would actually chide us and say that okay, go in, and it's not okay to be here, things like that. I mean, sometimes it was like in a manner in which I can see like 40 fathers, you can also say, right? Like 40 people or something like that were looking upon us. So some of the things also got like in your case, your friend's father, mother influence. Those situations also factored in, I would say. So yeah, I think these are two things which I think we need to be aware of. That society thing, I'm not sure if there is something like that now, because at least I don't see that in the current metro life and other things. Because even though we may be living in the same apartment, we may be sharing a lot of things compared to the previous generation or the way that we grew up in, but nobody takes responsibility, I would say. I mean, at least the percentage of people who are owning others kids, I think that is coming down. So that's not a very good trend, I would say. What do you think,
Yeah.
Joseph?
I also lived in a quarters. My mom was working in a school, and it was in a port rest harbor, and all of the offices and everybody, they had this quarters. So as you said, there were quite a lot of people. It was a community, and the community could be, they can all come together either for church events or a temple events or even that township events. All of that, they will come together. So there was a sense of belonging when you are growing up. You are not alone. But today, even though you might be living in an apartment or in a township, wherever it could be, we don't go and talk to neighbors. There is no community feeling. There is no belongingness. Everybody is there, and even when there are events, so for example for Diwali or Christmas or any of those events that are there, even then they all come together, they dance, they participate, and then they go back, and that's it. Like, there is a one
Yeah,
arm distance. You stay there, I stay here. And even so, I mean, the point that you say, when we grew up, the father or mother of another, maybe another church family, let's say for example, they had the rights to correct us. Even when we would come and tell our parents,
Exactly.
our own parents would actually be okay with it. Today it is
Yep.
more like, if at all you would say something, why are you telling about my kids? My kids are okay, they're all fine. And then next time onwards you're not saying that, right?
Yeah.
So I see this more and more secluded one. So in a way it is good, because there is also not a pressure from the society, and uncles and aunts are not dictating what needs to be done, so that is good thing. But on the another thing, I see that feeling of community, feeling
Yeah.
of belongingness has gone away, and given space to that individual thing. I know what I want, I will go and do what I want, and so on and so forth. Again, I don't know which one is right or which one is wrong. All that I'm saying is this is a changing thing, which again puts pressure both for kids as well as for parents in general, but fathers in specific, is that almost disciplining a kid, raising a kid properly, falls squarely on parents
The
now.
parents. Yep.
It is not about the society. The society is probably, they will condemn, but they are not
Yeah.
even coming to help. They will criticize, and so on and so forth. But there is not much of a help. That is one. Two, at least in my case, in your case, your mom and your in-laws are staying with you. But in my case, we have been alone for very, very long time.
Mm.
We have been traveling around. My parents are willing to come, but then there's a cold here. The winter and summer could be extreme.
Extreme.
So
Yeah.
my parents did come here for quite some time, but they couldn't. So the point is, we have been alone.
Yeah.
Now the responsibility falls squarely on us. So then you are only doing it. So as I said, I don't know whether it is right or wrong, what is good and bad, but that's what the changing situation is.
But Joseph, just on that point, right? I just wanted to stretch little further because I think this is more important. Although I have a little strong feeling that you're not taking a view. I mean, you are kind of, from what I see, you're taking a balanced view. But I have a little strong feeling that okay, that was what we had was much better than what we are now. Because that I feel is because there are so many people to rely on, that community and belongingness. All of that also is important to bring us a whole individual, right? Like because we trust a lot of people now. Because of these scenarios, there are side effects which also are leading to trust issues, right? Like whom you trust. I mean, we can go. I mean, people who grew up there, we can walk up to a stranger and say that, uncle, I'm lost, and can you drop me at my place? I'm not sure like whether we will be in a situation as parent to even allow our kids to do that. I mean, go to that extreme. And I don't think our kids are also in a situation where they will take that leap of faith. And because a lot of conditioning is happening now, seeing that strangers are not so good, and so many other things, right? It's not just we are telling, but there's a whole lot of ecosystem that breeds that sort of an ideology. Um so what do you think from this stronger
So
viewpoint? What are your thoughts?
see, I think it happened because we stayed with the same families for a very, very long time. You lived in that community, and I'm sure out of that 40 that you talked about, 35 of them would have been for a very, very long time. In the quarters that I lived,
True. Yeah.
almost everybody that I knew, they were there for 20 years or so. 20 years
Hmm.
that we lived in that particular place. We knew everybody, and we participated in their family functions. They participated in our family functions. They knew about us, where we are studying, what we are
Yeah.
going, and all of those kinds of stuff, right? So in that particular sense, the trust is a lot more easier to make because you have seen them all the while.
Hmm.
Today, even if you live in an apartment, it's all a migrant crowd. They come in, they take up a job, they are there for 2 years, then they are gone. Somebody else is coming in, you are moving out, and then so on and so forth. So in that particular sense, it is difficult to make a trusted connections. And you are also right. I'm sure it would be the same thing with you. On Saturdays and Sundays, probably the most of our time were spent outside the home. We were either playing, somebody else's house, in a library, wherever. We were not at home. And I don't think our parents were worried that we'll get lost, or, yeah, I mean, they might get lost, but they'll come back because there are people. They're not going to be kidnapped. See, one of the thing is them being kidnapped, the kids being kidnapped, or kids being lost, or kids not being able to come home was not even a concern in a close community. Today, if my son does not return in 30 minutes, I am like,
Yeah,
what is going to happen?
true.
Right? So 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 that is there. I think that the trust issue is because of that. And today we are not letting our kids go out and play again because of the trust issue. But what I was saying is, sometimes that community could be the community conditioning could be choking,
Mm,
for especially
okay.
for kids.
Mm,
For
mm,
kids to find their own individuality, there has to be a space that has to be given. But if 40, which is like, 80 eyes, 40 parents are looking, I mean 40 fathers are looking, 80 eyes are looking, they are going to have a hard time to develop on their own. They're going to feel that constraint all the time. So I think that is why I'm saying there has to be a space. If there is a space, it has to be there. And in my case, I live in a different city. I do live in a community, but then again, everybody is very different. So there's not much of a belongingness, the a sense of belongingness. So my kids have a space to grow by themselves, to identify who they are. But at the same time, I also miss that kids are not getting that belongingness, that not they are not getting that particular. It I think what I have come to understand, anything that you take is a double-edged sword. It goes both ways.
true. Yeah. Yeah,
so
interesting.
so the yeah, the other point that I also want to say is, see, fatherhood is so important. We are not taught about it at all. We see, you and I probably we are interested, and I'm sure there are a lot of listeners who are interested. So they will learn about it from a book and so on and so forth. There is no workshop that is happening. There are no sessions that are happening on fatherhood. In schools and colleges, we don't talk about it, teach about it. None, zero. And that is going to have an effect on the, and like at least earlier there was a family, and a multi-generational family were living together. Or like
Yeah,
in your case and my case, we lived in a community where there were grandparents and great grandparents. So they went
yeah,
and saw, we learned from them, all of those kinds of stuff. But today we are all alone,
yeah.
and unless otherwise we learn. So I sometimes think, I talk a lot about that to my boys, is that we don't learn about fatherhood or parenting at all in our school and
School and
colleges.
colleges. Yeah.
And then we come out and we don't have anything to stand upon, lean upon, is what I would say. What do you think about it? How are you learning about the challenges of fatherhood?
Yeah, so challenges come all the day, all the time. So most of the times
And they are different every day.
they are different every day. Like in cricket, right? It's like googlies and bouncers that come off your way, and
True, true, true.
sometimes you duck, and sometimes you face, sometimes it gets hit. So all sort of experience happen. So most of the times, Joseph, unfortunately, the sad reality is it's more of learning by doing. Is what I would
Mm,
say. And then yeah, talking to friends, and then yeah, sometimes our colleagues, things like that. It also depends upon what sort of a personality individual you are also as, right? Like whether
mm,
you are more outgoing, whether you are more extrovert, that sort of a bucket also you can say, right? Like you share a lot of things about your family and kids to people, probably they will also open up and they will also share and things like that. So it also about what sort of a person you are also, that will determine what's the sort of inputs that you will get. But very specifically to answer, I think it's more of learning by doing, talking to some of the close
mm.
friends circle, and some people in the network, like some seniors, like seniors in the sense somebody who was already raised. I mean, they are much ahead in the journey.
On that particular point, I want to, not the senior mothers, the point that you were talking about, when you're talking to seniors or when you're talking to even your colleagues, do you seek for advice, or how does, because the conversation for me has never been
Okay.
about seeking advice. It is almost always about whining and complaining. so
Okay.
so
So
is it more about sharing your challenges and, oh my god, this is what is happening, and they will say, oh, this is what is my happening, or anytime you have sought advice?
at least, I mean, now you asked this sort of a question. So I think it usually starts like, okay, I may not start with complaining more at this point of time, because some of the things, I mean, I don't think my kids have gone to that stage where they put me in that spot
Hmm.
to complain, because they are still young and very naive actually. So anything they are doing, it's more of ignorance and being not aware, because at a 4 year, 5 year old, they're not well aware and they're still very young actually. So not in that complaining mode yet, but yeah, I would start sharing with what happens, and this is the sort of reaction maybe my daughter gave to me when I said this thing, sort of a thing, right? Like this sort of thing maybe I share. And yeah, with friends, okay, they may see that, okay, this is quite normal, or maybe in this case, maybe your response was something which would have been the reason for her to behave this way, things like that, because it's still very young for me in the journey, is what I am thinking. And yeah, so sometimes I think mothers are more mature in the sense, I think people who like people, senior professionals, right? Like mothers who are already there, right? Like maybe they would have already having a 12-year or 15-year-old kids with them. So from what you are saying, that anecdote also, I think they have a lot to offer in, in our case also, in my case also. Sometimes when I talk to some of my old colleagues who are much senior in that roles, but I think they have a different perspectives, and that is more useful for me actually. That has
True.
been more useful to me even before I started the journey sometimes. Yeah, so that is how I am learning, Joseph. So there is no
Yeah.
5 point rule to new fathers sort of a thing.
Chicken soup for fathers.
Yeah, so I think once we get to that stage, we can be best-selling author, I say.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point of this particular conversation also. I mean, you and I, we talked about it. The point of this particular conversation also, hopefully it forms some basis. It may not solve all the problems, it may not answer all the questions, but at least if it forms some basis, I think we would have done whatever we wanted to achieve on that particular front. See, the
So
other
just
thing,
no,
yeah.
just I wanted to say one thing is, I think two things we should say do is, one is spend more time with kids, because unfortunately,
Hmm.
traditionally fathers have not spent a lot of time with kids. And then second is, sometimes it's more about listening than talking to them also. I think observing, listening would be much, I think, much needed traits. And I feel some of the things that you start learning also is being patient, being curious actually. Because my daughter has started asking a lot of questions. So like, why the sky is blue, why stars come only in the
Hmm.
night, so that sort of thing,
Hmm.
right? Like she's in that phase. So it again bring that curiosity, right? Like these are something which we have got bored of things, and we don't even, it doesn't even matter now to us, like. But these are things that also helps us in our professions, for example, right? Like, so I would say that curious about little things, even small things, right? Like, oh, small things matter. So these are things which also I am starting to learn. And I think listening, observing more than talking can be also a good way to, I mean, time your yeah.
Very true, KK. Any relationship for that matter, even with friends, it matters a lot. But then with kids, it is even more, because one, they are, whether it is in that particular age that you are talking about as your daughter, or say for example my son 13 years old, in that age also, they're also trying to understand the world, look at the world, they're trying to navigate in the world. So they have a lot of questions, they have a lot of curiosity about why something is happening, why somebody is reacting in some way, and so on and so forth. So they are asking a lot of questions. Traditionally, as you rightly said, fathers do not spend a lot of time with kids. We think our job is to earn money, and then kind of if we get closer, we may not really, I mean, the kids may not really listen to us, they may not obey to us, and so on and so forth. I think in my opinion that is wrong. The more bond that you make, as the example that I gave about Sheila auntie, the more bond that you make, you don't even have to discipline them, they will grow up disciplined. If you have that particular family values and everything, right?
True,
The
very
other
true.
thing, yeah, the other thing that I wanted to tell was, especially with respect to fathers, we do not, men in general, we do not seek advice. Nowadays there is Google Maps, but otherwise it used to be said men do not ask for directions, because we are afraid of asking any kind of an advice, any kind of suggestions from anybody. But in my case, in addition to Sheila auntie, I have asked questions to people who are elder to me.
Mm, mm,
Elder in the sense not just from an age but also from a journey point of view. I would go and
yeah.
ask them, should I teach them multiple languages?
Mm,
What do you think about it? How did your kids come up, and so on and so forth. So I was specifically asking questions,
yeah.
and that gave me quite a bit of knowledge, so to speak, to come up to that.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts on this, how we can learn about fatherhood, KK?
I think that's a closing thought. So, Joseph, I would say I don't think there is anything like that to my knowledge that we can, okay, this is a course or this is a book that we can do and read and we get to that. At least at this point of time, it's more of learning by doing and being more of an observer and seeker, like now you said about these advice and other things. So seeking thoughts from others who are already ahead of us in this journey. So probably those are two, three things that I would say is going to be really useful for any aspiring fathers or who are already in the journey.
From everything that we have discussed, again, many of these things are coming unscripted. We
Mhm.
only think about the themes, and then we go on as a casual conversation. From everything that you have discussed, what I am observing is, one is that we ourselves will have to be self-aware. What
Right.
we liked growing up, what we did not like growing up, and so on and so forth. So we need to be self-aware. That's the first point. Second, I would say we need to pick and choose role models, whether in our friend circle, whether it is in our colleague circle in the corporate office, or in our society and everything. So we need to pick and choose the role models, and do not hesitate to ask questions. Ask questions. How did this happen? How did that happen? What do you think about this? And so on and so forth. And as you rightly said, learn by doing. Patiently listen, spend time, listen to the kids. I think that's a great point. In this 30 minutes of the conversation, if I were to pick one particular segment, I that would be that we need to spend a lot of time with our kids. And
Yeah.
as a father, we need to spend a lot of time. It can be at home, it could be taking them somewhere. In my case, I jog with my son. That's 1 hour of spending time with them every single day. So we need
That's a
to
very good
spend time.
that's a very good practice, Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like, I mean, I would say we need to, if at all we want to be a good fathers, I think we need to spend a lot of time with our kids. Lovely. That's a good point that you made. Yeah. I'm happy that we are ending with that particular note.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you liked it, please subscribe and share the conversation with others. And if you have any further questions on fatherhood, or any observations on how our conversation are happening, please feel free to send it to us. We will put all the links of how to contact us on the description. Please share them with us. Thank you. Have a life of wins.